So I was going to ask you what gave you sort of the conviction to go against, the sage advice of your elders? Was it that you were getting a signal from customers that was telling you something different?
I've looked at some really good products that we are inspired by. I think Atlassian has built a fantastic culture
Hmm.
with Jira, Confluence, in terms of how they sell the product, very transparent pricing. Even at the enterprise level, there's like no negotiations. They leave money on the table on purpose so that they don't have to waste time and energy on negotiating stuff. So
Hmm.
this is a direction that we want to move towards even for the enterprise, and we're working towards that so that all of our discounting and stuff at the enterprise level is also very transparent. So that I think reduces a lot of hassle and back and
Hmm.
forths and inefficiencies. So sales can be extremely inefficient, but those inefficiencies are set up on purpose to force people to talk to a salesperson rather than let them try the product out themselves and use things. There are time and place for certain types of products where it makes sense, especially let's say you're selling to the government or you're selling this really big enterprise security product. Like then you probably need to do a lot of handholding. For the type of product that we were building, there were some many great examples like Slack, like Dropbox, like Calendly that inspired us to say, no, this is the way we should build, even if it's going to take longer. It's the right approach. So I think that was part of it. And we also brought ourselves in advisors and investors that were oriented around that. Like we wanted people that saw that vision. So the chief product officer at Slack was an investor in Fireflies. The head of sales at Dropbox was an investor at Fireflies. The first engineer at Dropbox was an investor. So we like took a lot of learnings from people that believed in the same things that we believed in.
Hmm.
And I think that helped counteract the traditional wisdom that maybe VCs will give you. And even our current VCs are very understanding of that long term vision. So you always want that VC and founder alignment in terms of the type of company you're trying to build, right? There's many different ways you can go on to build a billion-dollar business, but I think that what's important is you pick a path that's aligned with your strengths. And our
Hmm.
strengths were definitely product, and it was not around negotiating the minutia
Yeah.
of a sales deal or contract. So part of it is also lifestyle. Like this is like the type of life that I would rather lead is go solve bugs and make the product great than trying to like have to have customer success bang on doors for renewals and make it really really annoying for customers, right? Um,
That's a really interesting point, and this is one that I deal with a lot. So, again, I'm an executive coach, and I deal with founders of all types. But a very common founder type is the sales, the sales guy, and it's one of those, if all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. When as a product-led growth, but also as a human-centered design evangelist, I focus a lot on friction, right? Eliminating friction, not only in the user experience, but within the company itself as well. So they come to me, they've got all these problems with their engineering team and their marketing team or whatever. And so we focus a lot on eliminating friction. It sounds like what you've done is you've eliminated all the friction in the buyer's journey by essentially removing the salespeople from the process and focusing on just a really nice and elegant and intuitive user experience. But so, the sales led or the sales focused founders often think that they have to insert themselves or insert sales in that buyer's journey because, as you mentioned, it's either A, they want to maximize, right, the revenue from every transaction, or maybe they feel that the hand holding is necessary in order for the customer to get the best experience. But really what they're doing is they're creating an obstacle and they're
there's gaps.
scaring away a lot of potential customers.
Absolutely. You start when you have great salespeople,
Hmm.
it allows for a mediocre product to get away with certain things like onboarding and
Hmm.
monetization. So this is not to harp on salespeople at all or the sales function. I think sales is absolutely necessary when you go up market and when you're trying to deal with multiple champions at an enterprise level. As we start thinking about enterprise ourselves, because we have a lot more enterprises that are interested in Fireflies, we've been starting to learn more about what that process would look like and how can we make sure that the parts that don't need a salesperson aren't
Hmm.
there and only the most The places where sales can add the most value is the only place where we implement humans in that process. So we're thinking about it almost as like how you design a product, how we design our enterprise system. The other thing that I found very interesting, because over the last month, I've been speaking to sales executives, understanding what is the core success criteria for enterprise sales. So this includes speaking to CROs, ex-founders, VPs of sales, folks that have done billions of dollars in revenue. And one thing that I found very, very interesting from my initial presumption, right, of what salespeople are. Oh, salespeople are like sleazy and they're like car salesmen and they're trying to be very pushy. But in fact, almost 7 out of the 8 executives that I spoke with, they didn't start their career in sales. They are very data metrics oriented and very much focused on the customer journey. And again, like we talked about, removing friction. And they were there not to push an agenda, but how they were trying to do is, are we the best thing for you at this point in time? If so, how can we help? And how can we eliminate friction in the process? So it's also changed my perspective on sales, what good sales can be. Because when I talk to these people, I'm like, yeah, I would want to buy from these people, or these people can relate to me. They're coming from a product, a marketing, an engineering background, and they didn't start off in sales. So I think the lessons that are taught to SDRs and AEs about running the clock and pushing like spammy messages to lots of leads and sending a lot of outbound messages is different from what happens at true relationship building level, right? At the end of the day, AI can come in and do all of this busy work for you, but you will always need humans to help forge and build relationships inside a company, right? So that, for me, I'm sold on that I do believe sales has a role in place. But if you can automate out all of the musical chairs and get to the meat of it and have a human have a honest connection with someone, it is still valuable. So yeah, I just want to make sure that like not all salespeople, like we love sales, we sell to salespeople. It's just that there's a time and place for the type of sales you want to bring into an org.
Yeah. So that's actually the number one resistance that I see to product-led growth is this perception that it is a power struggle between sales and product. So, sales-led growth is the traditional way, and product-led growth, the product manager comes in and says, we got to do product-led growth. And the salespeople say, well, screw you, right? Like, we're not going to give you all of the power and give you all of the attention. And really what it comes down to is the budget. Right. Well, let's invest all of this money and hire designers and product managers and so on, so we can make this incredible, effortless onboarding experience and so on and so forth, taking that budget away from the sales team. And that actually has caused the product-led growth initiative to fail in a lot of companies. And so the way that I frame it that has gives it a lot of traction is that product-led growth is a scaling function to sales. Right. So the problem with sales and sales-led growth is anytime you have a human in the mix, it's either not scalable or it's linearly scalable. Right. But when you get to a certain level of scale, you need automation and you need economies of scale. And product-led growth is a way to simply make sales more efficient. Like you said, have the salespeople focused on the highest value work or the highest value deals and let the cheap stuff just kind of run on its own in an automated fashion. And that has it's helped smooth things out quite a bit in my experience.
Segmentation is really important so that you know that you're putting your best people on the areas where attention is required. I was speaking to a chief revenue officer at a company that I think is valued like 10 billion plus right now. And they did product-led growth for the longest time. And they were oriented around that DNA for sure, right? And then I spoke with other folks at like similar companies where they started out with individuals, then teams, and then now selling into the enterprise. So I do think that all paths eventually lead to where when you are trying to be a massive company and you're trying to get enterprise approval, you're going to have people involved in the process. But segmentation is important. And then as well as turning product-led growth into a leads engine. That's really hard, but that is what it is. So what the CRO told me was, if there's any person we want to sell to, someone in their company is probably already using their product. And that's the same case for Fireflies, right? If you just focus in on that. So I think that you're going to have a great self-service engine. You're going to have people that pay for it themselves, but there's also a lot of leads. And one of the things that I always thought about for product-led growth was I didn't think that was the end all be all, but it was that you're solving a demand gen or pipeline problem for salespeople. So one of the reasons a lot of salespeople want to come and work at Fireflies is because we have infinite leads and all of these product qualified leads that are potentially there. They don't have to go do outbound. And I had to do a lot of sales calls in the beginning, demos, get people set up. So throughout that process, I learned a lot. And one of the hardest things for my personality is doing outbound. Even to this day, like I think one of the things that we've oriented the business around is I cannot do outbound. It's something that like, it's not the fear of rejection, but it's more around the idea of I don't want to go bother someone, or I don't want to be the 50th email in their inbox. So I'm a big believer in that saying that if you chase a butterfly, it'll always fly away. But if you create a garden and create value, the butterfly will see it and then come into that garden. So in the same way, we wanted to create something of value, get people interested, foot in the door, use it. And then if you want to have a conversation, it's great. You turn that outbound into an inbound sort of lead, right? And I know we're talking about a lot of product, but this is also like something that was really personality oriented. I know founders that are sales led that can go, do 100 phone calls, knock on doors, cold outreach, that grit hustle, but that doesn't apply to everyone, right? I think your personality and who you are plays a big role in the type of outcomes that you need to do. Eventually, once you've saturated the market, you may have to think about outbound, right? And I'm not always rigid in my thoughts. I'm flexible, but that's something that I thought about. There's huge opportunity here. Let's run this playbook instead. But yeah, I think that there is this intricate balance that has to exist. But I think product-led growth alone is not going to get you into selling to everyone in an enterprise. You need to connect the dots there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. First off, I love the butterfly analogy. I'm going to use that. That's really clear and impactful. But I also kind of like this idea that every founder, every person has a personality, and there's no necessarily right or wrong way to approach business or approach strategy, but to align the strategy, right, or in the way that you do your business based off of your own character, I think is really important. I think there's a lot of founders. This goes back to I think your earlier point around, taking other people's advice. Is that if you really understand yourself and understand, your characteristics and what resonates with you, you can find a strategy that aligns with that and that can be successful. And I think a lot of founders, and I actually deal with this a lot, with my clients, there's a lot of imposter syndrome and there's a lot of keeping up with the Joneses, especially in the Bay Area where everybody's hustling and so-and-so are making it and they're at the spot and they say, man, so-and-so just raised 10 million bucks. Why does it seem so easy for them? Right. Well, let me go see what they did and maybe see if I can copy it, but then it doesn't work for me. Right. Because everybody's different. Every situation is different. Every market and product's different. And so I think there's a really good message there that be true to yourself, understand yourself, and align your business to fit you, and don't try to go copy others. That's really powerful.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And not to harp on Silicon Valley, but especially in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of smoke and mirrors, and there's a lot of fake it till you make it type culture. People presenting themselves to be bigger than they are. But in reality, what comes to be the test of time is longevity, right? How long can you last and how much money are you going to spend? So a company, if it's spending $5 to earn $1 from a customer and then doing a lot of PR and noise, sure, it's going to be the talk of the town for a few months, a few weeks, but that's not what's going to build a fundamentally long-lasting business. I actually think some of the best businesses are workhorses that are heads down, building out these incredible systems. And I think the culture is also changing, for better or for worse. All of the layoffs and the things that are happening, it's not easy to do an enterprise or SaaS level sale anymore, because you have to really prove to your buyers. You have to actually make it worth it. So I was talking to an executive in the past, and he had a rule where he would not hire from the top brands like Slack and Dropbox and Salesforce, because you have to ask yourself, was that salesperson closing those because he was a really good salesperson, he or she was a really good salesperson, or were they closing because the brand carried them most of the
Hmm.
time? Oh, it's
Hmm.
Slack, I'm going to buy it. Oh, it's Dropbox, I'm going to buy it. So I actually think that because it's not so easy or so obvious to do a deal today,
Hmm.
you have to have people that are willing to put in the work and focus on
Yeah.
the fundamentals. But that's what the Valley was like back in the 90s and mid 2000s. So I think things did definitely get easier for folks. Everyone was using SaaS and everyone had budget.
Hmm.
But now it's not the case. And we'll see how long the macro events, interest rates, and all of that look like. But it's definitely harder than before, and
Yeah.
I'm hoping the Valley is going to shift towards the right direction.
Yeah, I'm a little getting a little long in the tooth here. I'm over 20 years in the software industry, so I've been through a few ups and downs. And what I realized actually in this past year and a half, when things took a downturn, I have a lot of clients that I realized, when we had our last financial crisis in 2008, these kids were in maybe elementary school, middle school, high school. This is the first time that they've ever really seen a crisis. And that is incredibly formative. This has been the longest bull run in certainly my lifetime. And I think a lot of people took so many things for granted, that now that there's this reckoning and they're having a really hard time making sense of things, and again reassessing essentially everything that they took to be true. And so you kind of you alluded to it there as well. I mean, going back to like I was there for the .com days. I was there for the financial crisis. Been there for this one. It won't be the last. But there's obviously lessons to be learned with this hardship, and one of those is that there are the fakers who are going to get wiped out. Right? I think of it as like a forest fire. Right? When there's a forest fire, it comes through and it clears out the underbrush, and that's bad for the underbrush, but that leaves room and space and nutrients now for the stronger trees to build and grow stronger. And so those of us that have the grit, that have the principles and the intention, and are able to persevere, will only be stronger for this, because there's simply more resources, there's more room, there's more ability to connect with customers, and so on. So I see these now as opportunities, right? Not only crises.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. So now, obviously you've gone through a certain part of your journey, and now I assume you're reaching a scale stage here. What are some of the challenges that you're focusing or facing the most today as you're approaching scale?
We want to serve a lot of different personas,
Hmm.
a lot of different types of companies and industries. How we manage that. So, in a way, Fireflies is a product that is oriented into 10 different products for 10 different industries,
Hmm.
and 10 different personas. So, the combinations and permutations get a little bit more complicated.
Hmm.
Um, One of the things is you have to do self-service at that point in time because you can't have a salesperson for every different segment. One of the things we're excited about is we're building our muscles in the enterprise. So we have SOC 2 compliance, we have security, access controls, all of these really powerful features that are in place. We also got HIPAA certification, so we can now go into healthcare. There's been a lot
Hmm.
of demand there for us. So I think it's about managing the demand. How do you go focus on the areas, go deep? But breadth is inevitable. So
Hmm.
we have to deal with breadth in terms of the type of people that use it. Okay, a salesperson will use Fireflies, a recruiter will use Fireflies, uh, someone in real estate will be using Fireflies. And we think deeply about how do we build something for a lot of those different personas, right?
Hmm.
If you look at Dropbox, everyone's using Dropbox. It's not just a tech person that's an engineer at a tech company. Everyone, someone out in the Midwest working at an oil rig in the South, like there's everyone that's using this sort of technology. Digital transformation is here to stay. I believe that people are much more receptive to the idea of generative AI and
Hmm.
what it can do for a business. And ChatGPT has completely blown open the market in terms of awareness.
Hmm.
So managing that is going to be a really big challenge. for
Hmm.
us to think about. So how do you chase all these different leads?
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you stay true or stay clear on each of those individual customer personas, right? So how do you scale that same level of connection and clarity as you multiply your personas? Definitely.
Yeah.
Now, what about you personally? So as a leader, as a CEO, how do you feel you've had to grow and change as your company's grown?
It's very hard if you're a perfectionist to want to get involved in everything and make it perfect. So
Hmm.
that's the first area you have to improve about yourself. There are going to be certain things that are not going to be perfect, but it's important that you enable others to do to the best of their ability. That starts with hiring people that you can trust and you can look away. It's also about the capacity to translate certain ideas and topics into reality. And I think the best leaders are the ones that can, if required, get into the roots and have the respect of the team because they know what they're talking about. They're not
Hmm.
talking about high level metrics or being hand wavy, but they can actually like talk the talk. The most important skill I've learned is to detect BS, whether it's from customer interviews or recruiting interviews, or even people that want a piece of your time, right? Like vendors that you're dealing with. Just get really good at understanding where you align with someone
Hmm.
and what does that mean in terms of are they saying actually what they're saying or is there something more to it? So
Hmm.
reading people, and again, this is something that will apply to people in various aspects of their life, even their friendships, relationships, dating, etc. But when you try to understand where another person is coming from and have empathy for what that person is looking for, you then start to understand what are their incentives, what are your
Hmm.
incentives, and what are you trying to accomplish. So I think what has changed me in terms of this leadership role is understanding that not everyone has the same goal or outcome, and everyone has a different journey that they're on and different
Hmm.
motivations and different incentives that make them want to do the things that they want to do. So through that, I've quickly learned to understand and align with people that are similar to what we're trying to achieve at Fireflies, and then try to stay away from people that don't seem genuine or that don't they don't walk the talk,
Hmm.
or the things that they say don't add up. I think the common
Hmm.
example is in marketing. So we're like talking to different agencies and different folks, when they promise a lot of these things or these results for their end clients. But when you ask them what is your LTV or how do you think about these sort of things, that's when you see the cracks start to open up, right? So asking really good questions and having absolute clarity, even when it comes to firing people.
Hmm.
Sometimes people feel like they shouldn't and they should keep waiting. If it's not going to get better over a quarter, most likely it's not going to get better over 6 months or 12
Hmm.
months. And many folks that I've worked with, also advised, have told me that I should have let someone go sooner when I saw the writing on the wall. It actually made it worse trying to drag things out, right? So those are some of the things that you start to learn, especially if you're really caring and want to make everyone happy. It's very difficult. You're going to have to make hard decisions that some people are not going to be happy with. But yeah, these are all things that have changed me as a person as a result of the role that I'm in.
Hmm. Is there a new frontier or a new area of growth that you're focused on today?
One area that I'm trying to spend even more time on, like I said, was when there's larger opportunities and customers. And when some of our sales folks say, hey, Krish, can you attend this call and share a little bit about the vision or mission? It changes the dynamics of that conversation because those customers feel like, wow, I'm getting the attention from the
Hmm.
CEO, from the founder, and they're very aligned in terms of what we're doing. So I've started to understand the value that I can bring if I'm attending those meetings or having face to face interactions with customers rather than over Zoom. Those are things that I've found to be very valuable, and I felt like I've underestimated like what I was able to do. Like, oh, what's the big deal if I attend that meeting or not? But it's from a signaling point of view. Me being there made a huge difference. So
Hmm.
one thing that I'm trying to stay more connected to than ever is having more FaceTime with both my team as well as larger and larger customers that we work with and
Yeah.
be empathetic. Even after this call, I actually have a customer discovery session, user interview with an existing customer who is looking at our product. and they're trying to scale up to like some new levels. I also still take some demos from time to time, and I read every single support ticket that comes in, every churn log that comes in. So that to me is something that I've been passionate about and obsessed about. So I know that I'm going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, but at the very least, if I know what the customer is saying and what the customer wants, I think we'll be able to steer the ship like at least 80% of the time in the right direction.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I love to hear that. That actually resonates with one of the things that I get asked a lot is sort of like, well, what's the the thing you should do that doesn't scale, right? So whether I'm giving a talk or whether a client's asking me, that kind of question comes up, right? Well, what's the one thing I should do that doesn't scale? And it's always engage with your customers, right? I don't care if you're an early stage startup or if you're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar business. If you're not engaging face-to-face, one-on-one with your customers, you're losing touch. Everything you know or think you know about the customer is secondhand information. And the longer you go, and in fact, the larger your company gets, the more distance it creates between you and your customer. You're losing touch with them, with their pain points, with how well your product is effective in the market. And then through that secondhand information, like you said, there's a lot of BS out there, right? And the more people that are coming and giving you this secondhand information, it is always colored through their own perspective and their own agenda. So bravo. It's so fantastic that you're doing that, and obviously keep doing it. And again, for those of you who are out there who have heard me probably on every single episode of this show talk about how you need to go out and engage with your customers, it never stops. It's how you start building the company. It's the thing that you continue to do, and it's the thing that doesn't scale that you do no matter how big your company gets. Keep building those relationships, keep having those conversations, keep dipping in and getting the pulse, because that's how you stay clear and stay on top of your customer needs and how you can help them. Well, with that, Krish, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was an incredibly insightful and powerful conversation. I really wish you the best of luck. And for everyone out there, if you haven't already seen the little Firefly pop up in your Zoom meeting, go check it out, and you'll wish you did. Thank you so much, Krish. Have a great day.